Cocalico Township Supervisor meeting June 6th to order. Please rise and salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could we please rise and stay standing for about a few minutes or about a few seconds? Today is D-Day. 75 years ago, our forefathers landed on Normandy and Omaha Beach, and I'd like to spend a few minutes, seconds in memory of their Thank you. Please silence your cell phones. Pass the minutes for our May 16th board meeting. Any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Make a motion the minutes be approved as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you. Department heads, zoning officer.
Yes, as usual, I'll present a full report for the zoning office activities. I do not have anything at this time.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks.
Roadmaster, Chris.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For the month of May, I met with Scott Lehman from PennDOT and received the project number for the township's road work to be performed this year. I had Stevenson equipment at the shed. We had a loose wire on the mill head. They took them a little while till they found the actual problem. That's up and running again. AMS was scheduled to come into the township on May 20th to do the patch seal. They wound up calling me on May 3rd, letting me know that they were showing up on May 6th. That really put a kink in the schedule. We had to mark the roads, sweep the roads, and haul the stone in for that. We hauled in 120 stone, we got everything patched, and then we had the roads swept. All equipment that was on municipal has left the township property. We're working on Buzzard Road. We have one more pipe to do. It's the hardest pipe up there. The landowner basically had a nice stone wall mortar around the pipe. So we're trying to take it apart without destroying too much of the wall, get the pipe out, we're going to put it back in place, and then fix the stonework up. I have a tentative date of July 4th for when New Enterprise is coming in to do the paving. We had 2 properties in Quail Hollow that have repairs that need to be done prior to that paving. I have not seen any start on those 2 properties for the work. We had a ton of storm damage, both in the northern part and the southern part of the township. We still had some trees along the road. They're out of the right of way. They're on the edges. There's no issue to traffic. We'll chase after them as time permits. My main focus right now is that pipe work on Buzzard. That grant runs out in the end of June, so all fees have to be handed in by June. So that's my #1 priority. We started the MS4 drain inspections, and when we don't have anything to do, we basically service the trucks, and we took care of a broken door in the shop. The wind decided to grab one of the doors, slammed it that hard that it shattered the glass in the door. That's all I got.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody have questions for the roadmaster? Okay, thank you, Chris. List of bills, treasurer's report.
Okay, you have a list of bills and are as follows. You have a total general fund of $61,742.08 and a total rec fund of $527.73. Questions? Hearing none, I make a motion the bills be paid as presented.
I'll second the motion. Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Planning.
Good evening, Frank.
Good evening, Brent.
First item on the There will be some clarification on some of the agenda items with regard to how to take that to go. The first item on the agenda is members first. That is the preliminary final subdivision land development plan for the development of the property at 272 and Denver Road, 143 acre tract being developed to accommodate the credit construction of the credit union building. You had previously evaluated the project and recommended conditional approval, provided conditional approval on April 24th. The applicant and their consultants have been working since then and have secured MPDS permits, the ENS approval, PennDOT approvals for both water and sanitary sewer. And so now we're working down to final items. So there's a few motions that are appropriate in order to try to wrap things up and allow documents to be signed following tonight's meeting in the coming weeks. So if there's no further questions regarding the project itself, I'll jump into the motion. All right, the first recommended motion would be a motion to authorize the Board of Supervisors to sign the stormwater management and easement agreement for the members' first preliminary final subdivision land development plan as prepared by the township solicitor and as executed by the applicant and property owner.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
The next motion pertains to the park and open space requirement for land dedication or fee in lieu of. The applicant is submitted a waiver request requesting that the recent purchase price be utilized to determine that fee. So the recommended motion there would be to approve a waiver modification of section 194-46B4 of the subdivision and land development ordinance to authorize the fee in lieu of park and open space land dedication to be calculated based upon the recent purchase price rather than the appraisal value, acknowledge the acceptance of the corresponding disputed fee of $19,374.99.
Just for the board's information, they are most likely 99% sure they're going to enter into the LERTA program.
Right.
This is just a formality. When they actually do a LERTA application, then there'll be a waiver of that fee at that time.
I would make the motion.
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Next motion would be to acknowledge the required amount of financial security to be established with the township for the members' first preliminary final subdivision land development plan in the amount of $310,138.79 per the approved cost opinion prepared by Alpha Consulting Engineers dated May 31st, 2019.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
Next would be a motion to authorize the Board of Supervisors to sign the improvement guarantee agreement as prepared by the township solicitor when executed by the applicant submitted to the township with accompanying financial security in the amount of $310,138.79 in form acceptable to the township.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
And then the final motion for the project would be a motion to authorize the Board of Supervisors to sign the members' first preliminary final subdivision land development plan when appropriately signed by the applicant property owner and presented to the township following satisfaction of the outstanding conditions of approval.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Foxbrook, and that is a time extension. That's the preliminary subdivision land development plan for the property along 897, opposite Rose Hill Development. The applicant's attorney has submitted an offer to extend the deadline for action for 90 days. This correspondence is dated June 6, 2019. If there's any other questions. Otherwise, the motion would be a motion to accept the time extension for the motion to accept the written time, 90-day time extension offer is submitted by the applicant's attorney dated June 6, 2019, which will extend the deadline for action on the Foxbrook preliminary subdivision land development plan until September 28, 2019.
Anybody here representing this?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
The next one, I'd like to insert actually Heatherwood's Phase 4 and 5. Under action items below B, that actually is not related to Phase 4 and 5, that's related to prior phases. So in the engineer's report, the next item is Heatherwood's Phase 4 and 5 itself, and that deals with the ongoing expansion project of the Heatherwoods development. You had previously recommended or previously granted conditional approval. The applicant's working with the authority and our office to clean up any remaining conditions of approval. So similar to the Members First project, there's a few motions that have made will allow legal documents and financial security and stormwater management agreement to be signed when completed. So.
Anybody
No
here
further
represent?
questions?
No,
That's okay. Whatever you're comfortable with.
that's what you're comfortable with.
I'm Chris Wise. I live in 17 Conwood Lane, which is one of the Phase 4 houses for Heatherwoods. We're just here kind of to figure out what the township's interaction and kind of guidelines are for Burke's Homes with the development. We've been having some issues with them, with our personal homes, and also stormwater with all the mud going out in the street, and also curious what the township's involvement will be for pushing Burke's Homes to dedicate the roads, which they have not done for the previous phases yet, to my knowledge. There's some of the residents that live in those phases that the roads still have not been dedicated.
Well, the next one, we're going to be talking about the Heatherwood settlement agreements. We'll talk about the road dedications in a minute. In terms of, you said you're in Phase 4 or Phase 3?
Phase 3.
Okay.
So why is the township allowing Burke's to continue with Phase 4 and 5 when the previous phases aren't completed?
We're in the process of actually, we'll talk about that in a minute with the settlement agreement. That's the next on the agenda. But you're asking, your other question was related to stormwater or
Correct.
things that are specific to that?
The whole roads are covered with mud currently.
Right.
Yeah. Obviously, the roads covered with mud is not a preferred solution. I think they got caught in some of the recent intense rainfalls, and they were trying to recently seed yards, and were vulnerable at that time. All the water in those roads does get conveyed down to the sediment basin, so they are being conveyed to the basin that was constructed to accommodate actually the whole disturbance prior to construction of the road. So Casey had from our office has been out there, and we've been consistently in discussions with them to use additional matting and do other measures to try to expedite the establishment of seed, but and we'll continue to do so.
Brent, do they have socks down there?
They do in certain areas, but there are certain swales. They have inlet filters in certain structures behind properties. Some of those can actually, if they still in create bypass. So there's always additional measures that above beyond what's shown on an approved plan. They are generally consistent with their approved plan at this point, but.
Yeah, we've had, everyone that's in this room knows we had an inordinate amount of rain. I mean, I drive around the township after rain, and I see farmers that tell me they don't have any runoff, and the water is running all over the road. So, it's going to happen. I don't know how you prevent it. And you're well aware. I mean, they're not getting away with anything they shouldn't be getting away with. It's just the timing of everything. And I know that's not the answer you want, I know that. But if we stop the rain for a couple of weeks, that'd be great.
The conservation district's also out there right now, and if they're not compliant with their erosion sediment control plan, then they would be fined at this point. So there is going to be some mud that goes into the basins are actually designed to settle out the mud before it then goes into the stream.
And what about the road dedication? What is keeping them from?
Well, we can talk about that next. Again, that's the next item on the agenda after we get through what Brian's talking about now.
Yeah. And just to clarify, Bert, the recent home construction was in phase 3, which is under construction, and phase 4 and 5 are the remaining phases. The prior dedication was related to a prior developer, not parks themselves. So,
But just for clarification, they are meeting their plans, right, in terms of SOX, mitigation. They're consistent with what they have filed with us.
They have been identified, the Conservation District has identified things that they need to keep after or address. In terms of the yard areas, I would say they were in compliance there. And because there's actually, earth disturbance actually occurring in phases 4 and 5 too, in addition to what's happening on phase 3. I'm not going to say today that, somebody's out there today to verify every
No, right.
silt sock and every inlet filter. I will say the drainage area of phase 3 is collected and does go to a sediment basin. It does have a skimmer and a sediment curtain in it, and it is intended to collect and sort through the runoff and the edge.
Is there, so they started a fence around the giant pond that's in there, but it's like half done. Like, are they planning on completely fencing that in, or are they just fencing half of it and?
I think basically the limits of the fence that are in are probably the limits of the fence that will be installed. It goes between the basin and all adjoining properties and then wraps down a little bit where the berm actually starts from the sidewalk up. So that I think what's out there now is consistent with what was on the plan.
Is there a reason why that's all that's planned? I'm also in it.
It just seems like a hazard to me, because it's literally like I see kids playing around a pond up there. I don't know. It would be nice if they did something about that. I don't think, is a like a retention pool like that, is it supposed to hold water like that?
That's part of the issue. It's currently operating today in a different way as it will in the permanent condition. Its goal today is to remove sediment and hold water for extended periods of time to allow that sediment to drop out and be retained. So there's a configuration on the outlet structure that restricts flow out of it to meet that goal, and that's why there's a skimmer on there that's trying to remove water from the top versus being released from an outlet or an orifice or some other outlet further down the structure. So the way it's performing now is not the permanent condition, and it won't be allowed to be in its permanent condition until the entire area contributing to it is stabilized. So,
What is the permanent condition?
different basins are different. That one in particular, it has a circular orifice at the invert, and then there's like a vertical weir structure that goes up the riser.
I guess the concern is kids, and if the the completion project, if it's not supposed to retain that much water, then we don't have so much of a hazard.
It's to retain water. It has a different purpose. It would be to de-peak larger storm events. It would have trash racks and covers over the outlet structure itself. And I think that, so there are additional features that go on it. Once the skimmer is removed, there's a different arrangement that does have trash racks and things like that. But the intent of the basin is to store water. It's to store water for that contributing area and all the additional impervious. So I think some of the struggles with fencing, there's pros and cons of fencing. There's a perceived measure of safety with fencing in certain areas, but there's also, through that stream itself, you have floodplain and other ponding depths and flow depths that are, 3, 4 feet deep too. So in some ways, there's limited opportunity to fence out all, potential areas where water flows at several feet deep. So there were discussions related to that. It's actually, these facilities are controlled, that was the other part of it, are controlled ultimately by a homeowners association, which is created by the development. So the development itself can then implement additional measures that the development would feel is appropriate based on the residents that control that. So these are facilities controlled by the development itself.
Would it be helpful if we clarify a couple of things, such as getting you a copy of the pertinent parts of those plans, highlighting what they look like, okay? What the current situation is in terms of how that retention pond's being used and what it's supposed to be when it's in its permanent condition. I mean, just an overview. Would
Plus,
that be helpful to you guys?
I could say probably 90–95% of the basins don't have fences around them. So
That's
I mean, that's,
understood.
the realistic is, when there's a 10-year storm going on and we're having 7 or 8 inches of rain, parents shouldn't really have their kids outside playing in creeks and rivers and basins.
There's been
anyways,
water
for
in
all
that way before all these storms.
For the last
and stuff.
year.
It's been,
Yeah.
But again, right now, that's deliberately on purpose to
Right.
drop out the sediment. That's not the final condition. And what the fence was designed is for the final condition. And really, it's just a buffer between the properties that immediately abut on the basin. It's not for around the whole basin.
Right.
It's
Right,
more
as you go on around the fence, you're beyond the residential lots, you're on private property. And the fence was there also in addition because of the slope, so that there wouldn't be an inadvertent access to the basin that wasn't intended, so the fence is placed for that reason. I think Scott's point's good with regard to basins. It's not like this is a unique situation. You can go to Rose Hill, you can go to Ridgeview, Woodland Hollow, consistently, stormwater basins are not all fenced in. In fact, none of those are. So,
Are they half fenced in?
no, in some of those, well, I guess maybe Ridgeview has a little bit of fence between it and the park, so that is half fenced. So I think there's some evaluation as to, are there certain portions that you want to better define, and that was the decision making with respect to where that fence is shown there, because there is a slope that should be from the residences towards the basin.
Yeah, so can we do that, Doug? Let's get a baseline for you, at least in terms of what the plan showed, get you a little overview.
Can I make one comment? please?
Sure.
My name is Dan Burke. I've lived over there for 11 years, so I got to see this whole process through its making. There hasn't been water in that basin for 10 years. I understand the change. We're all common sense individuals. We understand that it's in a building process. I give you a short story. You're telling me private property. That's all. I pulled a 3-year-old kid out of that water, and that's why these 4 gentlemen are sitting here right now. 3-year-old kids don't care about private property. They don't care about fences. They don't care about anything. If you tell us as common sensible people here that the permanent portion of that basin will not hold water for a straight year at 4 to 6 feet deep, I think we can be okay with not having a fence, and I don't think we're not going to have 10 inches of rain in a given period of time either. It's been a crazy. We all understand that too. We're just curious. If that's not the permanent phase, if the permanent phase is to hold that much water as it is now, then there should be something done, because whose door gets knocked down when the next kid drowns in there, and that's our concern. It's not going to be one of ours, but at the same time, that's the concern. So we're not asking you to go out and spend a couple $1,000s more and put a fence in and make folks home. We just want to know, common sense rules out here. What's the end product? Is it going to have grass that's mowable, like Rose Hill or some of these other developments, unless there's a major water event? Or is it going to be holding water in perpetuity? That's the question. And if it's it's in perpetuity, then if I put a swimming pool in my backyard, I gotta put a fence in. There's no difference at all.
I hear what you're saying loud and clear. Bottom line, it's a liability issue,
Right.
in your opinion, and that's the question.
Right.
And I hear what you're saying, and that's why I think the very first thing we should do is, again, let's look at the prints. Let's get you a baseline as to what was originally designed for there.
Yeah.
Okay, what the phases were in terms of transferring it over, in terms of going from what it is now to it being a permanent retention pond in terms of the design. That gives you a baseline, right? And once you have that, then I think what we could do is probably sit down and take a second look at that and see, does there need to be an adjustment, or does there not? But I think-
The basins are designed not to hold water beyond what period of time.
Right. That,
But they're not, they're not probably days or years.
certain basins are detention basins, and then we'll have a release at the bottom, the very bottom. So would always be able to relieve itself. It should never have extended water beyond several, I'd say, 2 days after an event. And other facilities, to meet more current requirements, which weren't imposed on other developments up until this point, there's an interest in infiltrating water, getting more water to go into the ground, and releasing, matching the volumes from a pre-development condition. So certain basins will have an extended portion in the bottom, whether it be a foot, 2 foot, something that de-waters over an extended period of time. There's under drains in certain basins to be able to dial in that dewatering. No basins should sit, the general rule is over 72 hours, and the majority won't be over 48 hours, and that would be down to a condition. So different basins will perform differently based on how they're designed to meet certain requirements state.
That's what we'll see in the permit plan then, what that
Yeah,
means.
the plan will show, every one of these plans has a detail of the outlet structure showing the exact configuration, the size, the elevation of each.
the conditions they were designed for. That's why I think that would really be helpful for the OEMs to have in that baseline.
But in terms of redesign, there really is no redesign, it's just meeting what's in the permit.
It's, right.
So,
I mean, there is at this point no redesign. We have, the developer has to meet what's in that permit they have with the conservation district.
in full disclosure, so it's on the record, the new houses they put up, they were built over a major spring, so there was a constant stream running through that entire area that's continuously filling that basin. It's not just for water events. That's going to be a permanent pond if something's not figured out with that major spring that his house is built up on.
They're required to de-water the basins, so what will happen is if that is a continuous flow, then that means that orifice can change on
Yeah.
that, and so that
Just
it
making it for the
drains
record.
out.
I don't want to take that many more of your time, I just want to make sure it's on there.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so we'll take that action item on this side, okay? Thank you.
The first motion would be a motion to authorize the Board of Supervisors to sign the stormwater management easement agreement as prepared by the township solicitor and executed by the applicant/owner.
I'll make that motion. I'll second. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those no, motion carries. Thank you.
Next would be a motion to authorize the Board of Supervisors to sign the stormwater easement agreement as prepared by the applicant's attorney and executed by the applicant, owner, and reviewed and approved by the township solicitor.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those no, motion carries. Thank you.
Next would be a motion to acknowledge the required amount of financial security to be established with the township for the Heatherlands Phase 4 and 5 final plan in the amount of $897,462 per the approved cost opinion prepared by RGS Associates dated April 25th, 2019.
I'll make the motion. I'll second. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those no, motion carries. Thank you.
Next would be a motion to authorize the Board of Supervisors to sign the improvement guarantee agreement for the Heatherlands Phase 4 and 5 final plan as prepared by Township Solicitor when executed by the applicant and submitted to the Township Company Financial Securities in the amount of $897,462 in a form acceptable to the township.
I'll make that motion.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
And the final one would be a motion to authorize the board of supervisors to sign the Everglades Phase 4 and 5 final plan appropriately signed by the applicant presented to the township following satisfaction of outstanding conditions of material right.
I'll make that motion.
Second, any comments or questions?
Another quick question.
Yes.
How is that area zoned? Is that purely residential?
Actually, mixed residential.
Yeah, mix it.
Mixed residential.
Residential? So if somebody wanted to have like a rehabilitation-based home for people with special needs, something like that, or people who are being criminally rehabilitated, something like that. They could do that in that area?
Well, I've got some information on exactly the issue you're talking about, and we can get to that after Mr. Lee goes through his, if you like. Tell you what I found out, spoke to the company that owns that one house that's in question. We can get into that if you like, okay? This way you have latest and greatest information. All right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It would be a motion to authorize the board of supervisors to sign the Everglades Phase 4 and 5 final plan when appropriately signed by the applicant and presented to the township following satisfaction of outstanding conditions of approval.
Who made the motion? Oh, no, seconded? Yeah. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
Go on to Sturdy Built.
Yeah.
The next one's Sturdy Built. It would be 985 building expansion, and it involves property owned by Reinhold Property LP. There are representatives here tonight for this project. A little background, this would be the property at the corner of Stone Hill and South Muddy Creek Road. Adjacent, it would be the property previously referred to maybe as the Market Construction property. It was a property formerly part of the historic background, Sunline trailer, Sunline coach, company, multiple properties around there. Sturdy Built had acquired the adjacent property and developed that into their existing facility there, and has more recently then acquired this, which is a separate property. They submitted a preliminary site plan along with the request for a waiver of land development. There were multiple technical review meetings with the township regarding the project. So they also attended a zoning hearing to obtain zoning relief relative to certain aspects of a proposed expansion, some of which was granted, some of which was not. So they're reconfiguring the project in certain ways to accommodate that decision. And their request tonight would be to request deferral of road frontage improvements along Stone Hill and South Muddy Creek Road, and then also a authorization to proceed with a waiver of land development with certain conditions. So I don't know how much additional detail you want to get into it. I can read the suggested motion. The representatives could clarify any other aspects of the project. And I would just, for some context and some background, the township has approved waiver of land development on various other properties, one of which actually was the adjacent Sturdy Built property, where you have the majority of the key infrastructure in place, whether it be access, utilities, things like that, and there is a presence. And then the township has approved the waiver of land development and inserted conditions, extracted key items from the subdivision land development ordinance that would be applicable. It also should be stated that as part of their redeveloping of the property, the expansion would be kind of in the front corner towards Stone Hill Road and Muddy Creek, and it would align with the existing building line along South Muddy Creek, and the building would project over an area now that is currently a small office, kind of bump out on the building. That area would be in addition, we go beyond that area, but we encompass that area. They are also, based on discussions with the township, eliminating their current, I'll call it semi-informal stone access off of South Moneycreek Road. South Moneycreek Road is a PennDOT road. There was concern as far as long-term, getting that permitted or configured in a way which is appropriate for the types of vehicles that they would need to utilize it. Their current approach is to do away with that, remove all that stone, convert that stone to grass and landscaped area, and then utilize the other approved access points, one of which is a permitted access, shared access with their other property and has PennDOT approval, and the other would be their existing access off of Stone Hill Road. So, the first motion would be a motion to defer the requirements of section 194.25C1, 194.25J, subdivision land development orders related to improvements to existing streets and any widening to existing parkways, condition upon notation acceptable to the township being placed on the future stormwater plan to be recorded, documenting the deferral and the owner applicant's obligation to complete any required improvements in conjunction with future development of the property or when and as required by the Board of Supervisors.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next would be a motion to defer the requirements of section 194.32 of the subdivision land development ordinance related to the construction of sidewalks along the public roadways. Condition upon the notation acceptable to the township being placed on the future stormwater plan to be recorded, documenting the deferral and the owner applicant's future obligation to complete sidewalks in conjunction with future development or when and as required by the Board of Supervisors.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
Next would be a motion to defer the requirements of section 194.33 of the subdivision land development ordinance related to the construction of curbing along the public roadways. Condition upon notation acceptable to the township being placed on the future stormwater plan to be recorded, documenting the deferral and future owner applicant's obligation to complete curbing in conjunction with future development or when and as required by the Board of Supervisors.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
And the final one, the next one would be related to the park and open space requirements and fee in lieu of land dedication, as Scott referred to on the members first. If somebody's pursuing the LERTA, then there's a different way of dealing with that, and the fee is waived. So in this case, they have submitted written notice to the township of their intention to pursue LERTA, along with a waiver request. So the waiver would be, the motion would be to waive the requirements of section 194.46 of the subdivision land development ordinance related to park and open space, and the requirements to pay a fee in lieu of land dedication if the applicant applies for LERTA for the proposed project and building expansion.
And I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
And then the final motion would be a motion to approve a waiver of the other requirements of the subdivision land development ordinance and the requirement to submit a land development plan for the 985 building expansion as presented to the township, conditioned upon, one, the applicant obtaining stormwater management plan approval from the township and complying with applicable sections of the stormwater management ordinance. Two, the applicant recording the approved stormwater management plan. Three, the applicant signing the stormwater management easement agreement to be recorded. Four, the applicant obtaining approval of the erosion and sedimentation control plan from the Lancaster County Conservation District. Five, the applicant eliminating the existing stone access drive on the South Moneycreek Road and directing all traffic to other approved access locations. Six, all required parking shall be provided on an improved asphalt surface and consistent with applicable ADA accessibility standards. Seven, the applicant obtaining approval for any proposed modifications or alterations to areas within existing East Johnson Township Authority easements. Eight, the applicant acknowledging in writing the acceptance and need to comply with the conditions of approval of the waiver of land development, including any additional conditions the updated project information presented on the future stormwater management plan.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank
You have any comments?
Thank you for your hard work.
Well, there are going to be some additional steps. There's going to be, in the weeks ahead, a text amendment that's going to be submitted to them that's going to reduce the setback requirements for industrial properties that abut other industrial properties, not that abut residential. And there's also going to be work with Tom Goodman to reduce the right-of-way along the frontage of their property by vacating some of that right-of-way. When PennDOT put in the Route 222 project many years ago, and the bridge that went over it, they took an right-of-way in that area, which then kind of limits what they can do with their property. By vacating it and getting it down to the township standard 60-foot right-of-way, which would be 30 feet from center line on their property, that allows them to utilize their property like other properties along Stone Hill Road. So there's got to be two motions that will allow them and a tank that they have that's necessary for their operations to proceed with the development. We'll be doing that in the next months.
Just wanted to say personally, thank you very much for basically for investing in that property and improving that property. I drive past it numerous times a day sometimes, and it's very nice to see that property turn around. Thank you, personally.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay. Chief.
Go ahead. No.
Under B, why do you have the Heatherwoods? That's Heatherwoods, and that would actually be related to the prior phases. Phases 1A, 1B, and 2. And turn it over to Scott, but essentially, the township was holding a bond to ensure the completion of the improvements for certain phases. Heatherwoods, Burks has also committed to, let me clarify that, the bonding company had provided security for the improvements for phases 1A and 1B, or 1A and 2, and Burks had agreed to complete the remaining incidental items on phase 1B. So in conjunction with those multiple party commitments and obligations, an agreement was developed to clarify what needs to be done, how it's going to be done, and the exchange of funds accordingly. So that document has been reviewed by the township solicitor, and as I understand it, presented to you for signature.
So now going back to your questions. 2 years ago, approximately 2 years ago, the existing developer formally declared bankruptcy. Burks Homes bought the property. At that time, the township started the process about 18 months ago of calling the bonds. We established an amicable process with Lexon instead of taking it to court. So we felt that would be a lot quicker, and it turned out it was. What we are taking action tonight is actually a monetary settlement where Lexon is paying money into a trust, which will then allow the work to be completed by Burks to claim the previous developer's work, which will occur in the summer months, and the roads will then be dedicated in the fall. That is the timeline that we're now looking at this one. So I appreciate your patience through the last 10 years for those of you that have lived through having a developer go bankrupt. But we now are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Like the board's going to take action tonight. Lexon is, the bonding company is cutting a check of $209,000 approximately, which will allow to complete the work that the developer originally did not complete. That work will be done by Burks Homes. In addition, Burks actually picked up some of the work. We negotiated with them to complete some of the work that the developer did not complete that was outside of the bonding requirements that were being covered by this. They will be performing the work with their contractor, so they have an extension almost of their phase 3 work. And they will be dedicating their phase 1 and 2 roads sometime this fall, probably ahead of when phase 3 gets formally dedicated.
What is projected time for phase 3 dedication?
I leave it for now.
It's based on build out, so the township typically does not accept dedication of an expanded development or ongoing development until the majority of the homes are complete, if not all the homes. There's certain lots to be retained for an extended period of time, so that's to prevent wear and tear on the roadways during construction and prior to placement of final wearing doors and things like that. So obviously, we have no control over the build out. I think the developer was successful in proceeding with the development, and it looks, timing looks good in terms of, but I can't say. I mean, we've had other developments that, based on the housing market, drug on extended period of time.
How much is to do, or how much is to be built out in 1 acre, 4 feet?
Nothing.
Well,
So that could be choosing.
yeah,
So I'm saying that will be, that's what the dedication of the phase 1 and phase 2 is probably going to come ahead of the
yeah,
dedication.
they're unrelated. The dedication of phase 1A, 1B, and 2, I would say, are unrelated to the status of phase 3. Because that'll happen, all we really need is the legal description have been prepared. The majority of the paperwork's in place from the solicitor to have.
Paperwork's in place. If you look out there, you see a lot of paint on the sidewalks. Those are all sidewalks there. Supposed to be removed. Curbing is going to be repaired. A lot of the stormwater outfalls from the earlier phases have trees and other things that are growing up as they're let go. They're going to be all cleaned out as part of this process. Signs are going to be repaired or replaced. Some street lights are going to be straightened. It's basically cleanup work at this point to wrap up the whole phase.
Is the $209,000 sufficient to complete this? And
Yes.
if it's not, and they come back and say, this isn't, we need more money, then what happens?
The work is, if the work has been determined, it's thoroughly determined at this point, and it's marked down in the field. It's agreed upon by all parties at this point.
We just noticed tonight that a huge crack in the pavement coming out to the roundabout there.
That's a separate issue that has nothing to do with the bonding. That is caused by the phase 3 work and will also be caused by the phase 4 and phase 5 work, and that will be actually handled by those phases. That's outside of road dedication. The roads will be dedicated even with those conditions occurring. And the contractor, developer, we did videotape the roadways, and they're going to be responsible for repairs being made along those roadways.
And do the phases have to be dedicated together, or can phase 3 be dedicated, and then when phase 4 and 5 can be determined that X amount of houses have been sold and the requirement has been met, then they can be dedicated?
Yes. I mean, and
There
there's
could be portions, you can even dedicate portions of a phase itself if there's a benefit to doing that way.
The reason I say that is because I was told when I bought my house, my daughter has special needs, so road dedication was important to me, okay? That when 70%, I want to say 70% was the number, when 70% of the houses are sold, the road's going to get dedicated. So, as far as I'm tracking right now, there's only 2 more lots in phase 3 that need to be sold. So I would imagine that's above 70%.
I can't speak for what the developer told you. The developer's not gone through the final steps with us yet for road dedication.
Who's keeping Burt's homes in check? Like, it seems like they can do whatever they want. You understand? You know? What is the township doing to make sure everything is going as planned? Like, I know you have, oh, well, it'll get dedicated when this happens and this, but what if it doesn't happen? What are you going to do to come in and say, look, this is what we told you, this is what we agreed on, this is not happening, because say they decide they don't want to dedicate 4 and 5 or 10 years, like our neighbors who haven't had dedicated roads for however many years. How can you guarantee me that my road is never going to get dedicated?
Well, we guarantee you by doing what we did with the original one called bonds at that point. And we do self-perform the work, which is what we're doing for the developer that went bankrupt. The situation that occurred for Heatherwoods as well as for Carriage Hill or unique situations where a developer became financially distressed. In this case, Heatherwood's developer went bankrupt. That's not the norm at this point. The roads do get vacant. When you see the wearing course and other things that go on the road, that's when, from a township perspective, they're ready to be accepted for dedication. So the township sees wearing course put down and things like that, we're not ready to accept the roadways. And we don't want to accept the roadways until major earth moving is done, because that will just beat the roadways up. We put the wearing course down. So there's steps that have to occur. They're not, and from my perspective, they're not behind schedule with the plans. They're on schedule with what the work they're doing. What a realtor or somebody might have told you might be a different story, but what we're seeing from a plan perspective, they're on track with their schedule right now. They're not missing deadlines.
Yes, so our management portion of it is, think of it this way, in the simplest sense is, we have the bonds out there, okay? We have our engineering firm out there, we have our township manager who's also a PE, a licensed engineer, watching them. And we have Tony sitting here who's watching them, right? So our control is really in terms of the agreements they have with us and in terms of the plans and the designs that they put in place and where are they in that process, okay, to answer your question directly. Beyond that, as Scott has said, beyond that scope of what was promised, what was in their literature, what was in their marketing, what was in their advertising, I mean, that's outside our realm in terms of anything that we can do or get involved in.
But they're not showing anything that where we're going down the road of what occurred with the first developer. We're not seeing anything indicate that they're financially distressed or they're not going to be able to follow through. They've hit every one of the milestones so far in the plans. So I don't know where that 70%, I have no doubt you heard that. And I don't know where that factor, but that's not how you do a land development plan. It's not based off like a percent number of houses, it's based off the work we've done.
And it would be also, when you have a phased development, there are ways to try to control access into the development. So anytime you consider taking dedication of the next portion of the phase, you're trying to understand, can you restrict access of all the trucks that need to come in there to certain roadways, keep those off of other roadways. So that would all be considered when it comes time to dedicate. I think it's also important, I'm not defending anybody, I think it's important to identify that phases 1A, 1B, and 2 were not controlled by Parks in any way. So taking that history and immediately applying it to phase 3 is not appropriate. It may be an example of what could happen in some so-called worst-case scenario, but to project that and what we've seen in Perth from other standpoints and their actual willingness to be involved in solving some of these for the benefit of the development. And that's why when it was being approved 4 and 5, we had those, or phase 3, we had those discussions with Perth, because we didn't want to be in a situation where the township's approving additional development without helping to resolve these. So we had not agreed to proceed with some of this new development until there were certain obligations. And those obligations now have played out into agreements and commitments from that standpoint. So I think the township could proceed with the dedication of the existing roadways in those other phases.
If Berks had not helped out with the column and the bonds, we would have been looking at a 17-year legal battle to actually get the bonds called. I mean, so they have been working pretty amicably. They actually, like I say, took on some of the work, which made the bonding company more willing to cut checks because of that work that they took on. So the bonding company wasn't bearing all the costs. So I trust that Berks is going to complete the work that they're saying they're going to complete for these follow-on figures.
Chamber again. So the 1A, was it 1A, 1B, and 2? I guess 2 is the single-family homes. Which one is which?
Maybe a description. 1A would have been the kind of the town, the apartment or complex portion at the immediate loop. Phase 1B would have been the road up to the circle and down Cranberry. The single family road Cranberry. Phase 2 would have been the townhouses down on Ironwood and 2 woodland lots from the circle and up in towards the Phase 3 area. So the only aspect of that that Berks had any involvement with would have been they purchased the 2 woodland lots and rolled those into Phase 3, so those lots. Everything else was built under those prior plans.
Okay, Burke's built all those houses then too, just so we're part of that. They weren't the developer, that was Daniel Glass. But my question is, what kind of a bond do we hold? Let me rephrase. Burke's has been pretty good through this process. I think our concern, they've been decent. Our concern is they're going lightning fast because of weather, whatever the case is, and we're starting to see corners being cut, half-hearted, things, for lack of a better term, being done. Mistakes that they're correcting, which is great, I get it. But nobody foresaw, most people didn't foresee 2006 and 2007 happened where Daniel Glass then ran into problems. So let's say the market crashes for some reason within 6 months and Burke's is now toast. What kind of bonding do we have to ensure that the school bus is going to get up to Chris's house? Because we haven't had a school bus come into the development for the last 11 years because of dedication issues. And if it's just because of sidewalks and some curbing that's cracked, that we didn't dedicate that, we didn't get a school bus in there to pick up 30 kids, that's where kind of our concerns are. Again, we're common sense men here. We're not trying to be outside the box or point the fingers. We know it's a process. The concern is if Burke's does something stupid or goes bankrupt, is there any play from the township that's going to enable the township to then be able to dedicate those roads? Because the school won't allow school buses in there to pick up 50 or 60 kids now that are going to be here. So there's a whole lot more in play than just muddy roads and everything else. We're just trying to make sure that at some point in the foreseeable future, regardless of what happens to Burke's financial piece, those roads will be dedicated and our kids will be taken care of and people aren't going to be running the school bus on Hill Road, which is happening all the time.
To answer your question, all the public improvements are secured with what's called an irrevocable letter of credit in this situation. Pretty sure it's not a bond. Looking online, but
For which
for Phase 3.
I'd have to verify.
But they are secured by financial security, just like any other public improvement we do. There is a process. Typically, when you actually have a developer go bankrupt, it is at the end of the 50-year process of calling bonds and all the different steps that you got to do. That's your worst case scenario.
Right.
In most cases, you have a financial security, and that's the hammer to just get them to wrap work up because they want to move on to their next project and you don't release the monies until the work is done. And that's typically what you utilize in financial security. It's very rare you actually have a developer that goes bankrupt. But it does become a hammer to kind of just get things done for them to move on to the next project. It ties up capital and keeps them from moving on to their next job until they get that financial security release.
Right.
So that's where it gets used. But there is full financial security for all the public improvements, all the storm drain, all the roadway work, all the lights, sidewalk, everything that's in the public right of way.
So that basically what you're saying is they have a type of escrow account that you hold a major deposit.
You got it.
So they've already given you that deposit.
We already have that secured, and as work gets completed, then we